what is the Muslim woman identity? What would you advise for the women who are seeking to discover their own version of that?
My upbringing was quite unusual because my father was very anti-Islamic and very anti-cultural as well. So I was brought up in a household where I wasn't allowed to pray, I wasn't allowed to speak Urdu or Punjabi, and I wasn't allowed to wear anything that was ethnic. His reasoning behind it was because he wanted to integrate me into Western society. And unfortunately, I was extremely spiritual from a very young age. I used to secretly, my mother was from a totally different family. It was an arranged marriage. So she would bring me books on Islamic historical figures. And it was something I had to suppress. I couldn't show it because I was scared that he would be angry. So I grew up with everything percolating within me without me being able to have a voice. So it's kind of in contradiction to Amel's upbringing, where the force was outside of the home. This was inside the home. And I actually felt more comfortable outside because I was quite good at school. So people, teachers and kids were interested in my opinions. And I felt actually quite free expressing the fact that, hey, my hero is Abu Bakr Siddiq. So it was a very bizarre bubble in which I grew up, where the freedom wasn't at home for me, but it was outside. And I think things do, there is a qadr to everything. And I would say that, first of all, there's no age to learn. You know, if people do get swept away by the tides of society, you can come back in with that tide. And I think you have to be real with your strengths and your limitations, and you define yourself, your learning path, link it to the secular world as well, you know. Learn as much as you can about Islam and other things that interest you, because we are actually very universally connected. And I think the ultimate Muslimah is someone who can sit down with someone who is supposedly a far cry from everything that you are and find that connection. It's very easy to be among your own and be in that comfort zone, but that's not a test. You know, that struggle for me, you know, I speak Urdu, Punjabi. When I go to Pakistan, people don't believe I've ever been outside the country. I'm proudly a Muslimah. But I thank my dad for that now, because I wouldn't be a filmmaker if it wasn't for him. Because I'd be quite happy to just be married, look after my kids, just keep it, just you know, be part of the next generation. That was meant to happen for me to be who I am. And I think it's coming to terms with your qadr. Whatever happens to you, there's khair in it. Use it to your advantage.
I feel like it's life experience and education, right? It's nothing's ever been like a pin drop moment for me. It's just been a continual development. So I'm invested in my own education, whether that be going through the schooling system at university and finding a certain niche that I'm interested in, or whether that be with my Islamic education through coming to things like Ilm Summit or other education establishments. So it's never been like a defining moment. It's just been a gradual progression, and I'm gonna continue to do that and still find what my identity is. But for somebody who's looking to do that, then they just need to go out and not be afraid to do that. Like I feel like some people are sat in their rooms trying to figure out their lives but not actually doing anything about it, right? So just go out, speak to people, go to places, ask questions, ask advice in your locality, people that you're influenced by, and they'll find their identity, inshallah. And I mean, as long as you've got a good framework, as you know, a family that you can rely on, or friends, or your networks, you've got a support system there. Like, you don't have to do it alone. There's so many avenues for people to help you. Like you mentioned, how we're all universally connected. We're hearing so many stories of people finding like the best of soulmates from across the world, and that being the thing to establish their identity in life and what they want to achieve, and being inspired by other women or other Muslims or other non-Muslims.
You know what, I'd made a conscious decision because I'd heard about AlMaghrib for a while. And I sort of said, yeah, when I have time, I'd gone to certain exhibitions. And then I just made this decision, look, it's not about when I have time. This has to come first and everything else has to come second. It's almost like cleaning out your closets, cleaning out your home, spring cleaning. You have to empty out everything that is, you know, on the list of priorities, what's important, what's desirable, what could be done later. If you make your soul search, your quest for your own answers, your priority, you will be amazed. It's true that when you take one step towards Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala
Yeah.
takes 10 steps towards you. I've experienced that in my own life.
So,
Once you make that decision, which is the hardest thing to do,
Yeah.
you watch what happens.
That for me, that moment for me growing up, that was never defined by me being a woman or a girl. It was just me wanting to be a Muslim. Like that was me finding my religion, finding my belief. So the whole being a woman and issues and challenges, that never came into it. That's what I meant by it's just been a gradual progression. And so for you might have been more of a defining moment as a woman and putting the hijab on and the struggles you had internally. For us, that was just a natural progression.
I think mine was a natural progression as well.
Yeah.
For me, finding myself was actually finding myself isolated,
Right.
having personal conversations with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nobody else there, just me and Allah, and just developing that connection through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not being afraid to become who I was discovering myself to be. And with that, I discovered myself to be a Muslim. And with that, I discovered myself to be a woman. I never really thought about these things.
Yeah.
And then once I kind of gained strength in those identities, I was able to engage in my with my coworkers.
Right.
And if they did something or said something that I wasn't really like, there wasn't Islamically like something I agreed with, I was still strong enough to stand and say that this is the person who I am, and that's okay if I'm different than them.
No, I definitely. I mean, it's just, and I really feel so blessed right now to be, sitting amongst you. And I think that has been my experience in the Summit. Honestly, it has been a truly beautiful experience. And the reason being is, I think that as Muslims, as a Muslim woman, I think that I always knew I was Muslim because my family was Muslim. I mean, but it was like the moment that I decided that I wanted to be a Muslim. I think the moment I wanted to be a Muslim is when I felt even comfortable amongst Muslims. It's not that before I would run away from Muslims, but I would be in different protests and in terms of activism and doing all this work. And I would be amongst Muslims, but I didn't know what being Muslim was like internally. And once I decided to be Muslim, I'm Muslim, I understood who I was. So the more I got to know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more I found out who I really was. And so that is the beauty of Islam and understanding your creator and your Lord, is that once you know him, you get to know yourself. If you look at other books and different people and, people define you, you keep on, like, you for a moment, you think like, yes, this is me.
Fit in their mold,
right?
But
there's just like, you will see how you don't fit in that mold. And so for me, alhamdulillah, and I pray that all of us find, because all of us are in a journey,
Right.
and I'm really, so for me being coming to Ilm Summit was sort of like that moment of like finally being amongst Muslims and finally being in the same frequency, and that also learning about my deen. And so that was really, and I'm so happy and blessed that I got to not only hear your stories as well, but being amongst strong women. So alhamdulillah.
So, folks, that was the conclusion of our tag along with our sisters here. I am so tired right now.
We told you, we'll do it.
Ilm Summit has been, I don't want to say draining or exhausting, but
It's intense.
it's intensive.
Yeah.
It's been an intensive experience. What do you feel that are your top challenges being a Muslim woman and growing up in the quote-unquote West? As well as have you found struggles, or rather, what have you found to be the greatest contributor to discovering your identity as a Muslim woman? Let me know in the comments below. Overview: we had Nida Abu. Yeah. I'm totally tongue-tied right now. Nada Abu, she's a nurse. It's you and your husband, right? With Jism? Or is it just you?
It's me, but
Okay.
he supports me 100% everything I do.
With her husband's cheerleader. With Fitness Apparel from New York, we have Shazia Iqbal, really from Bradford, UK, Bradistan, and now in SoCal. Filmmaker, we've got Amal Abdurrahman from Seattle, social worker, and Jiva Akbar from the UK, Manchester.
Yeah.
And work with Discovery Personal Development.
Emphasizing that Manchester.
So, if you ever see any of us, don't be shy. Say hi. You know,